Hello, it's Matt O'Leary, and it's time for Progressive Metal Review. I don't really cover enough of this stuff, but I really do love this band. And that is, of course, the Swedish supergroup Soen with their fourth album called LOTUS. The band started way back in, I think, 2010-ish, with some big hitters from some big bands in this realm, like Martin Lopez, the drummer from Opeth, Joel Eklof, the beastly vocalist from Willow Tree, and Steve DiGiorgio, the bassist from some big metal bands from the 80s like Testament and Death. Steve and a couple other founding members have parted ways with the band, so on Lotus we're getting a fresh new lineup once again. The first two albums by these guys were produced by one of my favorites, David Bottrill, who's a Canadian producer who, among other albums, worked on Dream Theater's Metropolis Part 2 and Tool's Lateralis and Muse's Origin of Symmetry, and one of my favorite albums, Good Apollo 1 by Coheed. The band started with a pretty clear-cut, a pretty derivative, by-the-numbers prog metal sound on Cognitive, their debut album, which had the brooding riffs of Catatonia with the emotional intensity of like a Pain of Salvation, but mainly that drum and bass heavy sound of Tool. On their second album, Telluride, I feel like the band really branched out a little bit and created probably their most progressive album, with the songs just weaving and jumping around more than ever. Bo and I fell in love with the band. It was in 2017's Lycaia. That thing is a straight up, hard-hitting, unapologetic, hard rock record with some big old meaty hooks, not meat hooks, with plenty of glory and splendor for anyone who really appreciates the satisfying grandiosity of this kind of music. Soen's a band that truly wears their heart on their sleeve, and as unoriginal as the aesthetics of the sound are at times, I feel like the songwriting really stands up to scrutiny. Lotus does not stray too far from the path, opening with the song Opponent, with this hyper-masculine riff and one of those very Tool-esque tom slamming verses, you know, the doom da da doom doom da da doom ka da da gum da go da go go. The new guitarist Cody Ford brings some more agility to the sound with that relentlessly swift picking thing, that jigga 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 jigga. It's a nice little addition, but many of the instrumentals feel like a bit of a backtrack for the band, and there's just a strange predictability to a lot of the songs. In that David Gilmourian soloing on the title track, or that 4-chord, 4-note chugging sequence on the choruses of Covenant. Even the uplifting tones of Penance feel all too familiar. And the melodies and chord progressions aren't quite exciting enough to overcome that. When the closer comes around, the song Lunacy, I'm just struck by how many of these songs are in that mid-tempo, sort of 90 BPM range. A lot of the sounds on this one end up feeling a little bit too clinical, a little bit too sterile. And that's always something that's been hanging in the background with Soen's music, but on this one it just feels like it takes over a little more than usual. Soen slow things down and really make way for this big album centerpiece with the song Lotus, which I feel like is supposed to be this really big moment on the album, and it endorses, you know, stepping outside of your walls and waking up the animal inside you, of letting the wilderness be your home, with the mission statement coming on that line, where you walk, what you dream, measures who you really are. I don't think they ever really quite reached that moment they were searching for on this song, even though there's a real richness and a real fullness to the instrumentals in Joel's voice. River is a song where I feel like just the purity, just the depth of Joel's very Michael Ackerfeld voice very much steals the show, and it's part of that is due to just the reach and the range of the melody. Lascivious is probably one of my favorite songs, but it's another great example of a somewhat underwhelming, somewhat bland instrumental just being redeemed by Ekelof's just piercing and beautiful tone. His vocals, you know, while a little bit one-dimensional at times, are the lifeblood of this band. I don't think there's any denying that. But on the whole, I was deeply disappointed by this album, honestly. I feel like they did not reach the melodic brilliance of Lycaia, and I really was expecting and just hoping and wishing for them to turn a new page, progress into something different and fresh, but I don't feel like they did that. So this one's somewhere between a 5 and a 6 out of 10, and it's pretty unfortunate. I don't want to get you too down on Soen, though. I do love this band. I think they're one of the best palatable progressive rock bands that could really be an introduction, a foot in the door to this genre. So if you're not that into it already, start with Lycaia and go from there. But as always, thank you so much for watching.